Don't you dare play the martyr, not today." Her mother's tone was as sharp as broken glass. "I'm not playing anything, you know what you did." She kept her voice steady, knuckles white on the envelope. "You have nothing, do you understand? Nothing." The overhead lights hummed. Footsteps echoed as the crowd behind pressed closer. "My turn." She reached into her coat pocket and slid a digital recorder across the table. Her stepfather's hand shot out. "What's that supposed to prove?" The room stilled, every eye fixed. She pressed play. The tinny voice crackled with a confession. "No, you can't," her mother's voice caught, for once weak. Her gaze flicked to the judge, to her husband. "You let him do this," the man snapped. She didn't blink. "It's over. Everyone hears the truth now." The hush stretched, holding 1,000 silent verdicts. To understand how she ended up here, back in that suffocating room with everything to lose, here's how it all began. $46.11. That's what sat between Linda Miller and disaster, according to the hard blue glow of her phone screen as she parked beside the sodden curb in Blackwater Hollow, Buncombe County, North Carolina. Summer rain hammered the roof of her old Honda Civic, the wipers hiccuping in near defeat as she stared out across the ghost town's main drag, 5 boarded-up storefronts and the black, half-collapsed crown of the old Mason Hotel. In the passenger seat, her son Avery, 10 years old and still small for his age, hugged his knees in the oversized wool hoodie that once belonged to his late father. Their battered duffel bag sat wedged between his sneakers and a box of rain-swollen paperwork. "Is this it?" Avery angled his face to the grey-lit window, voice muffled. "It looks dead." Linda suppressed a grim smile. "Yeah, dead is about right." He rubbed his hands together, shivering. "It smells like mildew, Mom, the hotel, I mean." She ruffled his hair, feeling his damp cowlick spring back up. "Hey, better than the Civic, right? At least there's rooms. We'll make one cozy." He glanced up, eyes wide behind rain-streaked glasses. "Will there be hot water?" Linda winced. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves." They'd driven 2 hours in the rain from the last rented apartment, evicted on 30 days' notice. Linda had held it together until the text came through from Judith Miller, her mother. "It's done, don't come back, the estate is mine now. Don't make this uglier, Linda." Then another from her stepfather, Don. "If you set foot on that property, you'll regret it." After that, Linda had watched the last of her dignity drip away in the rearview mirror. Now, the family she'd buried, her grandfather's people, would haunt her from these mildewed walls. Linda pushed open the car door, stepping into 3 inches of water. The Mason Hotel was every bit as grim as she remembered from childhood. Turquoise boards hammered across the first-floor windows, front door wrapped in peeling yellow tape someone had written "condemned" across a lifetime ago. Judith and Dawn were waiting under the rotting awning. Judith's silver bob was immaculate even in the rain. Dawn, his teeth gritted behind a tight-lipped smirk, wore a glossy fishing jacket. Her Aunt Joan and cousin Steve lingered behind, clearly there for the fun. Judith's looked sliced as Linda approached. "Came to see if the ghosts would take you too," Judith called over the rain. "Leave her be, Mom," Steve offered with a shrug, but Dawn snorted. "Let her look. She might find mold if she's lucky." Linda ignored them. Above the main porch, a clump of peeling wallpaper caught her eye, peeling back from a cracked window on the second story. Strange. She remembered the nursery up there, papered blue stars on pale cream. A spot no one ever went after the incident her mother never explained. Hooked, she squinted through the rain. Was that? Yes, a section had peeled away, exposing not just drywall but old numbers scratched beneath. A combination code. If you've ever stood outside the one place everyone tells you to turn back from, just to prove you're still standing, keep listening. Avery pressed close to Linda's side as she wedged the ancient skeleton key into the mason's ruined lock. The rain left her hair flat and heavy, cold running in rivers down her spine. She braced a shoulder to the door, felt a jolt as the bolt gave way, and the two of them stumbled inside. It smelled of old smoke and rot, something ancient lurking under the bleached tang of abandonment. Still clutching the duffel, Avery looked up at her. "Are we trespassing?" he whispered, voice tinny in the echo. "Legally this is ours," Linda muttered, lying with conviction she didn't feel, at least until a judge says otherwise. They wove past caution tape fluttering off the posts, Linda's flashlight picking out shoe-raked dust on the lobby's cracked tile. Each step was a negotiation with splintered boards and unknown soft spots. Lightning framed their shadows on a wall once hung with sepia photos of the town's boom. "Avery, go easy," she warned. "Stay where you can see me." He tiptoed after her, nervously poking at a broken chair with his sneaker. "Mom, Dad would have hated this. He liked clean hotels, remember?" She tried to smile. "We'll give him something to laugh about, huh?" As she led Avery up the stairs, each creak protesting their weight, Linda couldn't help the sharp sting behind her eyes. She remembered summer trips here when her grandfather ran the desk, the kitchen always smelling of ham and cinnamon. Her mother had resented every minute, snapping at Linda for tracking mud or speaking up. After the accident that left Linda's husband dead, Judith's coldness calcified. Dawn had been quietly circling like a vulture since the funeral. Second floor, the wallpaper was peeling in thick, sodden strips, and there, just as she'd seen, old digits revealed on plaster, 7192. Avery tested the knob of the old nursery door. It stuck. Linda knelt by the wall, running her thumb over the numbers. The paste was loose under her fingernail. She peeled the wallpaper back. Beneath, a small, circular outline like a clock face mounted flush to the crumbling wall. "Mom, is that a safe?" Before she could answer, Don's voice barked from down below. "Leave it alone, Linda, that's not yours." Ignoring him, she pressed her ear to the spot. Hollow, she found the old combination lock and dialed the code. A hidden panel slid open. Air, stale and old, filtered out. Inside, a thick iron safe door, pinpricks of rust across its surface. Hook 2 gripped Linda by the spine. The mason was hiding something under all that rot. She let out a breath. Avery flashlight. He pressed it into her hand, gaze locked on the darkness beyond. The first barrier had given. She wasn't stopping now. They weren't alone in the Mason Hotel. Every creak, every draft told Linda that. She and Avery pushed through the musty upstairs hallway, pausing at each door. Dust muted every surface to gray velvet. The floor sagged dangerous under their weight. Avery reached to twist a doorknob stiff, corroded. Suddenly, his small voice piped up. "I think the walls are thicker here, Mom. Listen." He was right, a hollow resonance behind the paneling. Linda's heart thudded as she thought back to her childhood, grandfather teaching her to count footsteps between windows, laughing about how nothing in the mason was ever quite what it seemed. She ran her fingers along the hem of the baseboard and pressed. A click. Part of the floor shuddered, revealing a seam she'd never noticed. Avery stared transfixed. Secret rooms like on TV. Lightning flashed. In that stuttered light, Linda saw stairs descending through a narrow opening. Old boards led into darkness below the hotel, a place she'd only ever heard rumors about. "We're going," she whispered, folding Avery's hand in hers. "I have to know." Step by cautious step, they moved down. The walls closed in, the air so stale it pressed tight against their lungs. Linda's torch beam found a row of doors, painted with dull, faded stencils, bedrooms 1-4, pantry, vault. "A basement under the basement," Linda muttered, awed. "They hid it from you," Avery whispered. They tried 2 doors, locked, unyielding. On the third, Linda's childhood memory hit, the emergency key her grandfather always wore, now strung on her own keyring. She slotted it into the lock. The door swung open into a compact room, lined with steel cabinets and filing drawers. Barren except for a battered tape recorder atop a pile of ledgers. Avery backed away, tugging her sleeve. "There's a voice in here, Mom, let's go." But Linda's eyes blurred as she scanned the room. Pension checks stamped never sent, ledgers dating back to the Depression, and a thick cassette labeled June 6 for LINDA. She pressed play. Her grandfather's voice, frail but steady, filled the air. "If anyone's hearing this, they've forced my hand. Judith Dawn said if I didn't sign, I'd never see you or Avery again. I'm sorry, darling." Linda's hand shook. The recorder seemed to burn her skin. Next to it, a battered envelope, her birth certificate, amendments scribbled in her mother's jagged hand. Dates and signatures didn't match. A notary stamp was off-center, clearly forged. She mouthed the words. "They took it all, lied, forced him." Avery crept forward, touching her arm. "Mom, are we safe?" She hugged him close, every muscle tense. For the first time in months, she felt hope carved out of grief, raw, bright, dangerous as lightning. The Masons' cold hush held their future secrets. Linda didn't sleep. Instead, she watched rain snake down the cracked windows as she pieced together every scrap she'd found. The cassette, her grandfather's own words, proved her mother and Dawn had committed fraud. Every ledger, every mismatched document reinforced it. By morning, she wrapped the tape and letter in plastic and hustled Avery to the car, ignoring the ache in her legs. They drove through the gray dawn to Wayland and Barker Law down in Asheville, the only lawyer in her faded contact list who hadn't yet blocked her calls. The office was cramped, stacked with files and a battered espresso machine humming in the corner. Miranda Barker, all sharp elbows and shrewd brown eyes, barely looked up as Linda stepped in dripping. "You look like hell, Linda," Miranda called from behind a sheaf of paperwork. "Come to fight or just vent." Linda set the tape and envelope on the desk. "I found proof, audio, documents, the works." Avery fidgeted by the chair, shooting Miranda a wary smile. Miranda peeled her glasses onto her forehead. "Let's hear it then." Linda launched into urgent explanation, breathless. "They made him sign under duress. Fraudulent amendments. That's why the probate's skewed. They're bulldozing the Mason Monday to hide it all." Miranda blinked. "Bulldozers, seriously?" "Check the county permits," Linda insisted. "Dawn called in the demo for Monday at 9. Avery piped up. "My grandpa said don't let them win." Miranda's eyes softened as she ran the tape. The grandfather's voice trembled again through the office. She nodded grimly. "Kid's right, this changes the estate, maybe criminal exposure for Judith and Dawn. But if they knock the building down, all the hidden rooms and records, gone. You've got, 48 hours? Linda checked her watch. 2 days less. Miranda fired off a text. "I'll call the judge. You gotta be ready for hell. Judith'll smell blood." Linda sat rigid, bracing for the fight. Hook 4, the rain outside had finally stopped, but a storm was coming for her family. That night, back in the hotel's single unflooded room, Linda was exhausted, but peace wouldn't come. At 4 a.m. it arrived. The phone buzzed with a text from Don. "Know you're snooping," he typed. "You open your mouth, I ruin you and the boy." Linda felt her insides freeze. She phoned Miranda in a panic. "They're onto us." Miranda, voice groggy but fierce, muttered, "He can't touch you, not if we file first thing. Get copies of everything, hide the originals, don't answer them." Avery, half awake, curled next to her. "Is Grandpa mad at us?" Tears threatened, but she steadied her tone. "No, Grandpa would want us to keep fighting, even if it's scary." By now, Judith's lawyer had been alerted. Linda caught a glimpse of her mother outside the hotel, pacing in a glossy raincoat, umbrella gripped like a weapon. They locked eyes through the cracked window. Judith shouted over, "You never learn, do you? You don't belong here. This place was always poison." Linda threw open the window. "All I want is the truth. Why's that so hard?" A thick pause, then Judith's venomous reply, "Because you never deserved any of it. You were always the mistake." Don's truck idled just beyond. He rolled down the window and called, "You want to drag this thing out, Linda? Be my guest. The county will eat you alive." Linda shut the window, heart pounding. The lines had been drawn. The Mason's shadow fell over the courthouse steps, taller and heavier than ever. Inside, Linda clutched her battered files as she met Miranda in the marbled foyer. "Straight to Judge Pringle's chambers," Miranda murmured. "We're first on docket, don't flinch." They passed Judith and Dawn in the hallway. Judith's jaw was tight, her eyes 2 chips of ice. "You'll regret dragging our name through the mud," she hissed. Linda faced her. "It's my name, too." Dawn shot a look at Miranda. "Settle or we'll make sure you wind up homeless, your boy, too." Miranda barked a laugh. "Try me. Linda's got more evidence than you think." The judge's chambers were chilly, the ceiling fan drowning out the early arguments. As the proceedings began, the truth began to tear at every seam. But then, just as Linda felt the tide finally breaking her way, the email came. Dawn's lawyer had filed a motion to dismiss all evidence, claiming the tape was fake, the amendments valid, Linda nothing but a disgruntled daughter. It might have worked, might have, if not for Avery's sharp eyes. He tugged her sleeve. "Mom, why's Uncle Steve talking to Dawn outside?" Linda glanced out the window and caught the 2 men arguing, hands waving. As Steve stormed off, Dawn looked panicked, sweat beading at his temple. Miranda leaned in. "Steve's not as loyal as they think. Maybe he's got something to say." That night, Linda found Steve outside the Mason, hunched by the dumpster, chain-smoking. "You come to finish us off, or what?" Steve spat, but his hands trembled. Linda knelt beside him. "You don't have to cover for them. You saw what they did to Grandpa, to all of us. You helped me, maybe there's still something left for you." Steve's voice cracked. "She always hated you, you know, said you ruined her first marriage, ruined her money. Dawn just wants another vacation house." Linda pressed. "The safe room, you knew about it." His laugh was bitter. "I helped nail the boards up. Don't let them bury it with bulldozers. I'll talk if you back off on the criminal side for me." Hook 5, Linda saw it now. She wasn't alone. Even the betrayers had been twisted by Judith and Dawn's game. Armed with Steve's testimony, the recording, and the forged paperwork, Linda returned to Miranda's kitchen. Over microwaved cocoa, they plotted strategy. "We file for emergency injunction to halt the demo," Miranda said, ticking off steps on her battered legal pad. "Steve gives a deposition, you testify about the timeline, and we submit the birth cert and tape as fraud evidence." Linda's hands shook. "If I screw up, Avery loses everything. There's no safety net." Miranda squeezed her arm, voice gentle. "You're not alone, Linda, not anymore." Linda called Steve. "If you're serious, meet us at the courthouse tomorrow. Don't back out." Steve agreed, his voice flat but resolute. Miranda organized the exhibits. "You ready for this? They'll go for your throat in the hearing." Linda nodded. "For Avery, yeah. I won't let them do to him what they did to me." Time was ticking, demo crew scheduled, court date set, the final confrontation approaching like a train through the smoky hills. Linda arrived at the courtroom first, nerves chilled steel in her gut. Avery waited outside with Miranda for the first hour. It was adults, only as the hearing started. Inside, rows of wooden pews ran empty except for a few stragglers and the echo of every step Linda took to the defendant's table. Her mother and Dawn sat across, Dawn with his jaw locked, Judith with her lips pressed tight. The judge surveyed them all, gravelly voice calling for silence. It began with cross-examination, Dawn's lawyer shouting lies manufactured, grandfather was senile, Linda standing tall. Steve's recorded testimony echoed through the marble. I saw Judith threaten Grandpa. She said, "You sign or we cut you off, old man." I helped Dawn nail the boards shut. The digital recording played next. Grandfather's confession, every word heavy. They said I'd lose you, Linda. I'm sorry. Linda turned, scanning the spectators. Miranda, Avery peeking from the door, county registrar, two local reporters with notepads waiting to pounce. Now the moment from the cold open exploded into color. "Don't you dare play the martyr, not today." Judith's voice sliced, brittle in the heavy courtroom air. "I'm not playing anything, you know what you did." Linda steadied her hands, sliding the proof across the desk. "You have nothing, do you understand? Nothing." Judith's knuckles flashed white, eyes darting to Dawn. Linda reached into her coat, producing the recorder. Her voice was measured, cold steel. "My turn." Dawn lunged, hand slamming the file. "What's that supposed to prove?" "Everything." The room fell silent as Linda pressed play. Grandfather's words again, this time everyone heard. The trembling confession, the accusation. Judith reeled back, years of poise crumbling. "No, you can't," her voice broke. She turned on Dawn. "You let him do this, all for money." Dawn sputtered, wrecked. "Why'd you keep the tape, Linda? You really want to see your mother in jail." Linda looked her in the eye. "I want the truth, for Avery, for Grandpa." The judge banged the gavel hard enough to rattle the tables. "Enough! The evidence is clear. I'm issuing a preliminary injunction. Probate will be reconsidered, pending forensic review." The room erupted. Dawn tried to storm out. The bailiff stopped him. Judith sat, stunned, tears finally breaking the mask. Steve, outside, exhaled as if released from a decades-old bind. Miranda whispered, "You did it. They'll have to answer, civil, criminal, whatever it takes." Linda, for the first time, allowed her shoulders to drop. It was over. In the aftermath, justice was clinical and merciless. The court's order came swift. All probate distributions reversed, Judith and Dawn required to repay not only the Mason and its pipeline of hidden income, but years of back rents, interest, and additional punitive damages topping $380,000. Judith, unable to pay, was forced to liquidate her boutique and home in Asheville. Dawn's accounts were frozen, pending further fraud charges from the county DA. News of the case traveled, reporters printed the shame, all their old social circles vanished overnight. The Mason was saved from the bulldozers, its secrets cataloged and public. The rumors of thief heirs faded as the truth, the loneliness, heartbreak, and abuse rose in their place. Steve found a kind of bitter relief in yielding his part. He never spoke to his mother again. Miranda hugged Linda on the courthouse steps. "You gave Avery something nobody else could, a real start." Avery ran circles around his mother, joy unleashed at last. Months later, with the damages settled and the deed finally secure, Linda stood on the pockmarked porch of the Mason, sunlight seeping into the cracks. She'd scrubbed, patched, chased out the ghosts as best she could. Single mothers, battered women, and a pair of elderly sisters lived up in the Mason's second floor now, rent a third what the next town over would dare. Linda knew their names, their pain, their pride. Avery, gap-toothed and laughing, hammered ROOMS available onto a sanded board. Winter crept in, but for once there was fire and warmth and voices inside. In losing the family she'd poured her hope into, Linda had recovered one far more real. Some things you save by letting go. Justice, she learned, doesn't heal the scars, but it pries open the locked doors so new things can finally grow. If you've ever been written out of your own story, the end isn't always last place. Sometimes it's finally your turn to write what comes next. Linda's breath clouded in the cold air as she took in the Mason's wide, battered lobby, the creaks now mapped and familiar under her step. There was Avery's sweatshirt slung over the newel post, a trailing scarf one of the sisters must have dropped, the faint smell of cinnamon rolls rising through the vents from Miss Aloyse's kitchen in 2B. The hotel no longer felt haunted, not by the past or by those who had tried to steal it. For the first time in her adult life, Linda felt not just the absence of fear, but the shape of belonging. She stood at the window, coffee cradled in hands that had once trembled, and watched Avery shoot hoops with Callie from across the hall as a light snow began to dust the street outside. Avery sprinted in, cheeks flushed. "Mom, I made it from the curb. Callie says I've got a three-pointer." Linda smiled, ruffling his hair. "Keep practicing and you'll be famous by spring." Avery grinned up at her, then quieted. When can we put up the Christmas lights? You, me, and Miss Alois will climb into the attic after lunch. I think there's still some tangled up there from my grandpa's time. She gave him a quick squeeze. We'll make the mason the brightest spot in Blackwater Hollow. His smile, so like his father's, lingered as he dashed back outside. Linda listened to the hum of voices drifting from the communal kitchen, the gentle bickering of the sisters over the last carton of milk, Miss Alois's radio crooning a gospel song, Miranda's easy laughter as she walked the hallway with a clipboard and a pile of bylaws to discuss. A knock sounded at the office door. Steve stood there, uncertain, a cardboard box tucked under his arm. "This a bad time?" he asked gruffly, not quite meeting her eyes. She shook her head. "You're always welcome, Steve." He stepped in and set the box on the counter. "Found these in my garage, thought, I don't know, somebody ought to look through them." He shrugged. "Mostly junk, some ledgers, old letters." Linda hesitated, then gestured him to a kitchen chair. "Have some coffee, real coffee now, we splurged this week." He gave a half-smile, tentative as a bruise. "Don't mind if I do." As he sipped, Linda opened the box. Tucked under a faded set of deed papers sat an envelope addressed in her grandfather's slanting scrawl. "For Linda, if you ever find your way home." The sight of it made her throat tighten, not with grief but gratitude. Steve cleared his throat. "Listen, I figured you might want to know I'm heading out next week. Got a line on a job in Winston-Salem. Factory work, nothing fancy, but I just needed to say thanks. You didn't have to, but you let me stay on the right side of this. I won't forget it." Linda clasped his hand. "You did the right thing, Steve. You deserve to start over, too." He looked relieved, maybe even hopeful. "You're good people, Lindy. Don't let this place eat you up." She laughed, the sound unburdened. "We're making things new. Avery's keeping me honest." Steve grinned and, for once, managed an easy wave before ducking out into the wintry sunshine. When Linda finally opened her grandfather's letter, Avery was curled up by her side, reading his library book. She ran her thumb over the paper, unfolded it, and read aloud. "Dearest Linda, if you're reading this, you kept fighting. I always knew you would. The mason isn't just timber and stone. She's meant to shelter anyone who's lost their way. Let them in. Trust your heart. Family isn't made by blood, but by those who weather the storms together. Build something beautiful, even from ruins." Linda pressed the letter to her heart, eyes swimming. Avery leaned against her, silent at first, then piped up, "He's right, Mom. The mason's different now. Feels safe." She kissed the top of his head. "Because you're here, kiddo, because we're not running anymore." He beamed. "Can we keep letting people stay, even if they don't have much?" "We can try," she promised. "We'll make a real home." The days drew short, winter biting harder. Linda fixed leaks, painted rooms, haggled down the hardware clerk for new locks, all with Avery and their gaggle of tenants tagging along. The work tired her, but each night she lay in bed, listening to the laughter drifting through the vents, gratitude threaded through every aching muscle. The first night the new sign lit up, ROOMS available, each bulb a different color, they celebrated with cocoa and stories in the parlor. Miss Alois hugged her, tears shining. The sisters sang carols off-key and Miranda toasted her with cheap champagne. To new beginnings, Miranda grinned, glass raised. Linda clinked hers against the others. To family, however we make it. Old pains ebbed in the firelight, replaced by something warm and solid. On Christmas morning, Avery leapt onto her bed, bundle wrapped in construction paper. "Open it, open it." Inside, a wobbly painting of the mason, window glowing, figures waving from every sill. Linda brushed away tears. "It's beautiful, Avery." He snuggled against her. "It's us." And it was a place caught between loss and hope, stitched together by love and determination. No court order could make it so, only the daily work of forgiveness, of standing in the ruins and choosing to build anyway. Sometime late that night, Linda crept down to the old safe off the nursery. She spun the numbers 7-1-9-2 one last time, feeling the click and sigh of the mechanism. Inside, only empty shelves now, the darkness no longer threatening. Instead, she placed her grandfather's letter and Avery's painting on the top shelf. "There you go," she whispered. "Proof we made it. Let the ghosts rest." As frost glazed the windows and dawn crept in, Linda sat on the Masons' porch with coffee, watching Avery skate below with Callie and half the tenants' grandkids. Already she was planning renovations, maybe a mural for the lobby, a garden come springtime. Miranda joined her outside, hands shoved deep in her coat. "You look like you finally believe it, you know." "Believe what?" Linda replied, teasing. "That it's really yours, all of it, the future, the fight, the peace." Linda smiled, heart lighter than it had been in years. "I do, Miranda, I finally do." They sat in companionable quiet, sun glinting off fresh snow, the Masons sturdy at their backs. Inside, laughter spilled over, a small kingdom built on truth and found hope. Linda knew someday new storms would come, repairs, squabbles, ghosts of memory. But for the moment, this was home. Not just for her and Avery, but for everyone brave or battered enough to knock on the Masons' old door. And that, Linda understood at last, was more than justice. That was grace. The end. Avery's laughter chased away the morning hush as Linda watched from the porch. The Mason Hotel breathed with fresh life, its old hurts grown over, not erased, but transformed into the odd beauty of a home rebuilt by many hands. Sunlight danced across the snow, dusting the uneven steps where Avery and Callie played, their shouts ringing into empty places that once held only ghosts. Miranda slipped outside, settling on the rail with her usual pragmatic grace. "You ready for the year's end?" she asked, voice low. Linda tucked her hands in her pockets. "For once, I think I am. You believe that?" Miranda grinned. "I do. I saw it in court, Linda. The way you stood up, wouldn't back down. You remind me of your grandfather, the best parts anyway." Linda's smile softened. "I miss him. Still feels strange calling this place mine, like I'm waiting for someone to show up and take it away." "No one's taking it now," Miranda nudged her gently. "You earned every inch and then some." Inside, the sisters from upstairs were stringing last year's Christmas cards across the banister. Miss Alois banged a pan, summoning her grandchildren for biscuits. The Masons' halls overflowed with stories instead of secrets. Steve pulled up his battered pickup dusted with frost. He came to the porch, pausing to take in the whole view for a long moment before handing Linda a small wooden box. "Thought you should have this," he said, voice rough. "Gramps' old hotel bell, found it behind my dryer." Linda lifted the polished brass bell, it fit her palm perfectly. She gave it a soft ring, the peal bright and reassuring. "Thank you, Steve, really." He shrugged, then reached out, awkward, hopeful, and hugged her quickly. "Keep the doors open, Lindy." "Always," she promised. After Steve drove off, Linda placed the bell on the front desk and traced the inscription, "For those seeking shelter, ring twice." She rang it once, then again. Avery looked in, eyes shining. "What's that for?" Linda winked. "Just letting folks know, no matter who you are or what you're running from, there's room here. Always." He grinned. "Can I ring it next time?" She pulled him close. "You're the future of the Mason, kid. I think you can ring it any time you want." As dusk settled and the Masons' windows glowed, Linda leaned against the sill, content. She finally understood. Justice was survival, but love, chosen, fought for, and shared, was what built a home. The Masons stood proof of that, and so did she. Inside, the bell's echoes lingered, folding new memories over the old. They were home,